Shavua Tov and a good Tavach. Hope everyone is doing well and had a restful Shabbos for outdoor time for the sunny parts and indoor time for the rainy parts. And I also hope everyone had a chance to see the letter from Makor and to please note that there will be a webinar tomorrow night at 9:15. We're going to be sending out a very shorter email either late tonight or tomorrow to remind everyone to please join. And you have to sign up first. You can't just show up. So there's a registration link, v'chulei. So that email will go out shortly just to make sure that everyone is on the up and up as to when we're starting and with which guidelines and the approach that was taken. We should all stay safe and we should be zochet to brius and to regular shul. Just to be zochet to regular shul, it's a big bracha, so we should all try to get there. Tonight we're going to be learning Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Beis and as well Daf Ayin Ches. We're going to be learning some grammar Gemaras. We're going to be learning some Agadatas about the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not create anything extra in the world. We'll be learning some halachic Gemaras as well, learning a little bit more about some etymology, about where some words in the Hebrew language came from, and kind of, as we know from the learning world, what's referred to as a notary cone, when words have letters in them that seem to imply that they were parts of a conglomerate, I should say, of many other words woven into one, and then some halachic gemaras as well about shiurim that one would violate if they were to carry out certain items at a particular shiur. So we'll get to that as well. So right now we're on the bottom of Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph, just 3 lines from the bottom. And the Gemara there said, quoting our Mishnah, Chalav Kedei Gemiya. We said that drinking milk, if it was taken out in the shiur in which a baby would be able to swallow milk, a very small amount, tiny, minuscule, we're talking, what, a milliliter, it's a tiny amount. Asks the Gemara, how do we spell the word Gemiya? Ibayalahu Kedei Gemiya with an aleph, or Kedei Gemiya with an ayin, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Hagmi'ini na me'at mayim mikadech. Famous story from the Torah, and there we see it's with an aleph, so we conclude it's with an aleph. What about the next spelling of a different word? We learned in our Mishnah that when we're measuring fruits, we have to exclude the seeds. Well, how do you spell garin? Is it garinin with an aleph or garinin with an ayin? Amar Rava bar ula v'nigra mi'erkacha. And we see there that the word ayin v'nigra, we reduce from. We're reducing the seed from the volume of the carrying because it's not considered an ochel. So therefore we see it's with an ayin, so to here. Ibayluhu omamos, omamos. Are we talking about coals with an aleph or with an ayin? Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Abdimi arazim lo amamuhu began elokim. That's with an ayin as well. Ibayluhu ma'amatzin tanan o ma'amtzin. This is a din that applies to Rahman al-Islam, a case where a person is niftar on Shabbos. Is one allowed to close the eyelids of that person on Shabbos? So that may be halachically problematic. But how do we spell the word ma'amtzin? And that is a question with an aleph or with an ayin. Amar Rav Chia bar Abba, Amar Rav Yochanan ve'otzem with an ayin ve'otzem einav maros b'ra. Just an interesting halachic, totally tangential in regards to this sugya, but the word atzima sinayim, the question in the Bir halacha and Siman Ayin Hey, is one allowed to say Shema in front of erva if their eyes are closed shut? Atzima sinayim is the language of the Bir halacha there. So there we pass in halacha l'maisa that if your eyes had been open and there was erva in front of you, so then one should make sure not to say Shema. Even with Atzima Sinayim, you have to turn your head away. This shaila comes up frequently when you're at a table, you're making kiddush, you're making a bracha, and there's someone at the table, not your wife, but there's someone at the table who's not dressed properly. Usually with one's wife, we assume that there's a certain regilus, a certain familiarity, and because of that, we're therefore not as concerned about Yehurim. But when it comes to someone who's not your wife and not your immediate family member, so then there are real shilas in the poskim, and it's best to look down, because Atzima Seinaim doesn't work if the person is still right in front of you, so you should be looking down as well, so that even had your eyes been open, you cannot see. We are 5 lines down. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rav Yochanan ve'otzem. Next line. Tana Rabbanan hamotzi chalav shel behema kedei gemiya. If one takes out the chalav of a behema, the milk of an animal, the amount to swallow. Chalav shel isha ve'loben shel beitza. What about the milk of a woman? Human milk, ve'loben shel beitza, the liquidy part of an uncooked egg, that is kedei litain b'mishifa shel kolar. That's to place it into a mixture of place it into a mixture of kilor, which was some type of medication that we would put on one's eye. And what about the kilor itself? Kilor was just, let's call, a piece, one of the ingredients, kidei lashuf b'mayim, just to spread it around in your fingers with a little bit of water. Boy, Rav Ashi, kidei shifa o kidei achiza v'shifa. How much are we talking about? Is it just enough to make the minimum amount by rubbing the ingredient with water? Or is it enough to actually apply it such that we know that there's going to be some left on your hands when you're done? It's like, when you put some ointment on a kid who's got an injury, so you put it on your hand and you kind of brush it off. There's always a little bit of shamnunis, a little bit of grease left on your hands. So which one is it? Is it the exacting amount, or is it the larger amount? Again, these are slight differences, but is it the larger amount that would then make someone not chayev until they hit that threshold? The answer is the Gemara with the teku. 10 lines down. Dvash kedei litein ala katis. We learned this the other day, that honey is problematic to carry out when it was used on the injury that applied to a sus, as Rashi there pointed out, on animals. If there was an injury to an animal, we would put honey on top of them to ensure that that the wound was covered. Boy, Rav Ashi asks, Al kasis apuma de kula kasis. When we say that we can put it on the injury, does it only go on the mouth, on the opening of the injury? O dilma, maybe, does it go on the entire injury? Apuma to kula kasis, on the whole, let's say it was like a hive that was 1 centimeter wide with a peak. So do we only put it on the peak, or do we put it on the whole thing? O dilma, maybe morsa kama de kasis, you can put it on the very tip by the opening, by the cut itself. La fuke hudrana, to exclude the rest of the wound below that you're not allowed. Teku, that we don't know. We don't know which amount it is. Is it the lesser amount to only cover the very tip of the injury, or maybe to cover the entire red spot of the injury? And that we don't know the answer to. 1/3 of the way down, Ayin Zayin Amud Beis. Amar Yehuda, Amar Rab. Yehuda says in the name of Rab, Kol shebara Kadosh Baruch Hu be'olamo lo bara davar echad levatala. Nothing, not one thing that God created was a waste of time. There are plenty of things that we human beings have created that are a huge waste of time, but there's nothing that Kadosh Baruch Hu created that is a waste of time. And even before we get into the details, this is not just a question of what are the details. It's a question of a hashkafa. There's nothing that a Kadosh Baruch Hu made that's levatala. So that is a very important just approach to think about. All the animals, sometimes we may think to just randomly kill a bug, step on a bug. Today I had a bee came into my house in the warmth of the afternoon, a big wasp, huge. I think it was 1 inch long, scary looking thing. So the poskim in Sivan Shintes Zion, the Mishnah Berurah there writes that it's mutter to trap such an animal because they're dangerous and they can hurt people. And sorry, little kids as well, so that's terrifying for them as well. That's mutter to trap according to the halachos of tzad. But even that bee, we'll see today that there are aspects of bugs that are very valuable to us, even though we may not have a tfisa for that. And we have to be machshav each of those things as a bria chadasha and a bria chashuva. It says the Gemara, bara shavlul lekasis, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu created a snail or a bug in order to heal a wound. Bara zevuv letzira, Kadosh Baruch Hu created a fly. Zevuv is a fly in order to heal the sting of a bee. Yatush lanachash, the Kadosh Baruch Hu made mosquitoes to provide a cure for the bite of a snake. The nachash lechafafis, and a snake can heal certain types of skin injuries like boils. Usamamis, and a spider la'akrav, to heal for the sting of a scorpion. So all of these things HaKadosh Baruch Hu made, we may find them to be a nuisance at times, but when they are used the right way, so they are fulfilling Ratzon Hashem, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and that is that they are able to heal in one way or another. So that's just the applications of this rule that Rabbi Yehuda taught us, that Lo bara davar echad levatala, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not make any errors in his creations. Obviously, it should be Dvarim Shutim, but just a healthy reminder. Says the Gemara, Heichi Avidle, how does one get a cure for the boils from a snake? Says the Gemara, Maisi Chada Ukma, they take one black snake, the Chada Chivra, and one white snake, and obviously they're dead already and they're cooked together. He cooks them. Obviously it's treif mamish. You can't eat it, but you're allowed to apply it to your body. There's no Isser Hana. By many non-kosher foods, there's no Isser Hana. One of the only places that there's an Isser Hana by foods is when it comes to basar b'chalav. And that's because the pasuk of Lo Sivashel B'li B'chalei B'mo was listed in the Torah 3 times, one for the Isser Achila, one for the Isser Hana, and one for the Isser Bishul. So here we don't have an Isser Hana. So let's say a person had a wound, and the only way they could be healed is by is by the hana of basar v'chalav. So then that's only true if it's a pikuach nefashos. Otherwise, it's not appropriate because you're getting hana. Okay, so how does this work with the snakes here? So you cook them together, and the resulting food that is cooked, the resulting medication, v'shaifile, you rub it on the boils, and then it will generate a healing power. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis have taught us, chamisha amos haim. There are five scenarios of fear. Emas chalash al gibor, where the smaller one or the weaker one induces fear on that which is stronger. What are they? Emas mafkia al ari. Unclear what this animal is, but it was a very small animal that was very aggressive. Some of the Meforshim here write that it could cut into the head of the ari of the lion and kill it. So there was a lot of fear there. Emas yatush al hapil, that there are times that an elephant is scared of even a mosquito. Apparently, there were some bugs that would crawl into the trunk of an elephant, and it would potentially injure them. So they were scared of that animal. Emas samamis al ha'akrav, the fear of a spider. Samamis, as mentioned above, is a spider with a scorpion. Emas sinunis al hanesha, there was a certain animal. The article calls this animal a swallow, and what it would do, it would nestle in between the chest of the animal and its wing, and it would kind of tether the two, so it wasn't able to fly very well. And as well, emas kilbis al livyasan, this last one is less practical because the livyasan, which we know was used, the skin of it was used for the Mishkan, as we spoke about a while back. So there, this animal, the kilbis, would interfere with the life of the Levyasan. And even though the Levyasan was a massive, massive animal, but still there were fear in all five of these cases. Continues the Gemara, from Rabbi Yehuda Marav, another statement from Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Ma'ikra. How do we know that these things exist? That there are a number of things that induce fear in animals, things that seemingly shouldn't induce fear, the small over the large. I guess just by way of a simple mashal, for those of us who are scared of bees, it's a very small animal and it induces a lot of fear. People who are, they have arachnophobia, so that's a problem too. So what's the pasuk there? So it says hamavlik shor shod al uz, and this is hamavlik, one who causes the weak to be stronger than the powerful ones. So it says the Gemara, a fascinating story. Oh, I see someone has a question. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Livyasan and the Mishkan. And the Livyasan, I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but the Livyasan was a huge animal, and the skins were used for the animal. So we discussed whether or not it was permissible for one to use the skin of an animal that might have been tmeya. I don't remember exactly where we discussed this, but that was the sugya that we learned a while back. And different shitas. Some shitas said that the Mishkan was only built out of animals that were not tamei, and some say that they were even built out of the Livyasan. Reb Zera,
that's the Tachash, not the Livyasan.
Wasn't it called the Livyasan?
No, that's the whale. The fish of Mashiach.
The whale. That's what's going to be the Suda at the time of Mashiach. The tzaddikim are going to eat from the
Livyasan.
Which is a different question because whales.
I thought Rashi said on that sugya that the Tachash was a Livyasan. It might have been my error. I appreciate the feedback. I'll check back on that to confirm.
Back on the Mapia Shel Ari, it says the animal would scream loud enough that it scared the lion that he would think was a big animal coming to attack him. Okay. And another share I learned, it was said that it was a badger.
All right, I didn't know that those were such dangerous animals, but I guess so. Yeah, the lion was clearly scared in these cases, for sure.
No, he wasn't. It's not dangerous. He just gave that scream that the lion would think that it was someone bigger than him coming at him.
Rashi says that. Rashi says here, "Mafkia chayak tana v'kol gadol v'shomea v'yarei shetehei beria gadola uvoreach." But I saw in some of the Meforshim here that they were able to kill the animal as well. So
the Yoyada says that. Yoyada says that.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, let's continue. Reb Zera Ashkach Reb Yehuda. Reb Zera once met Reb Yehuda Dehavakoi Apischa de Bechamuha while he, Reb Zera, was standing at the home of his father-in-law. He saw that he was kind of a little bit more relaxed than usual. If you would ask him any question about anything, he was going to get some good answers. So he took his top many questions that he wanted to ask, and he did. And here's what he asked. Amar le, My taima ize maskan beresha. What is the reason? My taima, what is the reason that ize, that goats go in the front of the pack, v'hadar imre, and sheep follow? What's the reason for that? Goats before sheep. That would not have been my first question to ask someone who knew all the answers to everything, but nevertheless, this apparently was the sugya that Reb Zera was being osekin. Omar Lei, Reb Yehuda answers Reb Zera. We're going to spend a lot of time learning some of the traditions of Reb Yehuda today about certain unique questions here about animals, and then as well as mentioned about etymology, about how a number of words that we commonly use, how they developed. And Rabbi Yehuda says in Kibriyaso Shel Olam, same way that the world was created, as we know, night came before day. First it was dark out, Hadar Nahora, and then it was light out. And apparently these animals, the goats were typically darker colored, and the sheep were typically lighter colored. So that's why they follow. These animals are in touch. It's like by Parak Shira, where we see that these animals have insights that we may not know. So that is the reason why the goats who are darker walk before the sheep who are lighter. Next question. My time mahani mechasya and bahani megalia. Why some of these animals are covered? Sheep's their genitalia are covered by a tail. Masha'en kain in regards to goats. It says the Gemara in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, hani de mechasya minayu. Those from which we benefit, we get clothed by sheep. We get clothed by the material from the sheep. So therefore, mechasyan, they're covered. The animals that we don't cover ourselves with, they don't cover us from the hair of a goat, megalian, they are more revealed. Next question. My time agam zutar ganufte. A ganufte is a tail. What is the reason why the tail of a camel is zutar, is small? So Yehuda says, mishum de'achal kise, because they eat thorns. The Meforshim here point out that it's not that they eat thorns that make the tail short, but it's an idea that when you're around the thorns, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu made it, that their tails were shorter so that it wouldn't get stuck in the thorns. My time of Torah aricha genufte. Why is it that an ox has a very long tail? Answers the Gemara, mishum de daire be'agme, because they live down by the water, uvoy lechar kushe vake, and they wanted to be able to knock away the bugs that were on their backs. We've seen these types of things before when we've seen go to a zoo of those kinds of things. You see animals that use their tail to get rid of bugs. My time of karna de kamsa rechicha. What's the reason why the antennas of grasshoppers or bugs of the like were so soft? Rabbi Yehuda answers, Mishum de daire bechilfe, because they live among willows. They live among trees where the wood is very very rigid. The kasha, and if the antennae were rigid, then naja umisavra, then they would lose their sense of sight. The Gemara assumes that this was how they actually saw things. In fact, the Gemara then says, Amar Shmuel, if you want to blind an animal like this, all you need to do is lishlufinhu lekarne. You need to remove its antennae. Reb Zera asks another question. Why is it that by certain birds, by certain fowl, their eyelids go from bottom to top? Ours go from top to bottom. When we close our eyes, it's top to bottom. But some birds, when they close their eyes, it goes from bottom to top. So answers the Gemara, because the daire adape, they lived very high up in, let's say, a barn type of area, and there was some sort of source of heat, and the smoke would go up. And the ayal kutra, as the smoke would go up, if it would get into their eyes, misavra, so Kadosh Baruch Hu made it that their eyes close at the top. And because of that, they were then able to protect themselves from becoming blind. Now Reb Zera pushed Rabbi Yehuda to answer a whole number of words as to where the words come from. Dasha, the word dasha in Aramaic refers to a door, derech sham. Again, a play on words, dalet and shin, derech sham, because that's the way that people get into the house, is through a door. It's the way to the place. Darga, a ladder, is referred to as a darga, not in modern Hebrew. We call a darga a sulam, as a ladder in modern Hebrew, but back in the times of the Gemara, it was a darga, derech gag. It was the way to get to the roof. Says the Gemara, what about maskolisa? There was a type of hors d'oeuvre that they would dip their bread into. So why was it called maskolisa? Says the Gemara, masai tichlada, because with every bite of bread, you only took a small amount of the actual dip. And when is it going to finish? It usually would last a long time. I don't think they eat dips the way that we do. We would pound it on the bread and kick back quite a bit of it. But here, that lasted a very long time. What about the word besa? The word besa is ba, the asiv ba. Bo ve'esiba, come and sit in this place. That's where the word besa comes from. You have to ask the following question, because we know that the word bias is found in Tanakh. It's found in the canon of our Jewish literature. So obviously it doesn't mean that it's the way that Rav Yehuda is explaining how Kadosh Baruch Hu built the words. We'll see later in the Masechta more on this in about 30 blot or so about some of the structure of some of the letters. What about a biksa, which was a very small house? So Bei Akta, it's a very narrow. The word Akta means narrow in Aramaic, so it's a very small house. Kufta was something that was used for grinding, and it was freestanding, and if you tip it over, you can sit on it, and because of that, kof v'siv, kufta, kof v'siv, tip it over, and then you will be able to have a chair. What about livnei? Why are bricks called livnei? Because livnei v'nei, for the children of your children, when you have good bricks, they last a very long time. I live in a house that was built in the 50s and 60s. These bricks have not been swapped out. They last a very long time. There's a language called hutza, which is a fence. Says the Gemara, similar to the word chatzitza, because it separates me from you. What about chatzba? Barrels. Shechotzev mayim min hahar, because it collects water from a water source like a river. Kuza, small jugs were referred to as kuza. Says the Gemara, kazeh. It was kind of a language. Oh, like this little thing. This little thing is called the kuza kazeh. It's like this. Reb Zera asks more questions. What about shutisa, which was a myrtle branch? Answers the Gemara. It was shitusa. You look ridiculous. What is this talking about? Some of the Meforshim point out that when people were at weddings, they would bring a myrtle branch and they would dance wildly with them, just unabashedly. They danced and they looked a little crazy. So similar to the word shota, which means a little bit crazy as well. What about mishilcha, which was a place where a person would wash their hands, says the Gemara, because mashe chula, because it could wash. It could wash everything. What about mashchilta? Similar word. This was a very fancy washing cup. So there, mashya kalsa, that was used. That's what a kala would use. Mashya, wash, kalsa, a bride. That's what she would use to wash. So again, all of these words are connected by a larger idea, by many words. Asisa. What about something that was used as like a pitcher of some kind, like a bowl of some kind? So that's chaserta. It was cut out, and that's a similar language of asisa. Buchna, that item that was used to, the article translates it as a pestle, like a mortar and a pestle. When you have herbs and liquids, you would use it to grind. It had like a blunt end at the end of it. So that's because bo ve'akena. Come here, and I will break it down. I will beat it. So all of these words can have these explanations. Still more, levusha. A levusha was basically a coat. Lo busha, that there is no busha. So the Meforshim are explaining exactly what this means. That even a poor person would wear a different pshatim. What about a glima? A glima was kind of like a coat of old that people would wear more like a cape, kind of fancier clothing. Shenasa bo kigolim, but because it wasn't form-fitting, it didn't have a space for arms, it just made you look like a golem. It made you look like you were just kind of like a blob of some kind in regards to your clothing. So therefore, the nasa bo kigolim. What about gulsa? There was a fancy cape that people would wear, gale v'asiv, and when they would then sit down wearing this fancy cape, they would flip up the cape so that it wouldn't get worn down. If you can imagine someone who's wearing a bekisha, before they'd sit down, they'd flip up the bekisha behind them, kind of like this. They'd bring it up and wrap it around themselves so that when they sit down, it's not ruining it. Very, very similar idea. Maybe that's where those who were bekishas got it from this Gemara, because Galev Asi, they would uncover themselves by folding it up so that they wouldn't ruin the fabric. Puria. Why is a bed referred to as a puria? So this one might be somewhat obvious to us, because one can fulfill there the mitzvah of Peru or Revu. What about bor zinka? This is a pit that has no water in it. Bor ze naki. This pit is empty. This pit is clean. Sudra. Sudra is like a turban of some kind that Chashav Rabbanim would wear. Play on words. Sod Hashem li'rehav. What about a padna, a palace? A pischa dain. This is the door to which people should come to. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught us, Shlosha calls man shemazkinin mosifin gvura. There are three things that as they age, they get stronger. What are they? Ve'eluhein dag ve'nachash ve'chazir. All of these, this type of Gemara is Omer Darsheni. What does that mean? Everything when they get older, you think a pig on the day of its death, a fish that's aged out. No, it doesn't mean only this. There's something else going on here. B'chazir. Back to some halachic sugyas. We mentioned in our Mishnah previously, shemen kedei lasuch eiver katan. We said that the amount of oil that one could carry out by which they would then violate the Isser is the amount of oil lasuch to anoint an eiver katan, a small limb. What is this referring to? Amrei debei Rabbi Yanai, shemen kedei lasuch eiver katan shel katan ben yomo. This is the pinky of a baby. The smallest limb of a baby is his pinky, and only one who is 1 day old, which is a tiny amount of liquid. We're talking about a droplet, again, maybe a milliliter of oil. If one were to carry that out, then they could violate the Isser Shabbos. Very, very machmir shita, very strict. So says the Gemara, Meisive, hang on 1 second, let's see if that's right. Shemen kedei lasuch eiver katan ve'katan ben yomo. Here it seems from this source in the Tanaim that we're talking about more than that share of just 1 drop to cover the pinky. It seems lasuch eiver katan, to anoint an eiver katan, and ve'katan ben yomo. That seems like 2 things. My lab eiver katan de gadol, maybe it's the pinky of an adult. Ve'eiver gadol shel katan, and the large aver of a katan. So one of those 2 says, and that would be much more. So it says the Gemara, Amrei lach teber Rav Yanai lo hachi kamar. This is pshat in that source in the time. Shemen kidei lasuch eiver katan shel katan ben yomo. It's just merging the 2 parts of the sentence together. 2 parts of the sentence together. Kidei lasuch eiver katan, the smallest limb shel katan ben yomo of a new baby, works out perfectly. Says the Gemara, but maybe it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe there is taka, a machlokes, in the Tanoim about this topic. How so? It says the Gemara as follows, Lema ke Tanoim. Maybe there's a machlokes in the Tanoim. Shemen, one shita says about oil, kedei lasuch eiver katan v'katan ben yomo. Divrei Reb Shimon ben Elazar. And that's the way that we just tried to retranslate, not like that, like the Havamina, that maybe it's a larger shear. Reb Nasan Omer, no, kedei lasuch eiver katan. My lab, maybe these two Tanoim are arguing about the following. The Reb Shimon ben Elazar savar eiver katan shel katan. Maybe he's talking about the smallest limb of the smallest child. Reb Nasan savar eiver katan de gadol, o eiver gadol de katan. Eiver katan de gadol, the small limb of an adult, a pinky of an adult, or eiver gadol de katan, or the large finger of a baby. So says the Gemara, and continues the Gemara, aval eiver katan shel katan ben yomolo. But the second opinion would say that you're not chayav for bringing out the amount of oil that can be used on the smallest finger of a baby. So if that's the case, then we have a very difficult time with the shita of Rav Yanai. Says the Gemara, no lo. Tikule yalma eiver katan de katan ben yomolo. Everyone agrees that the shita of Rav Yanai is incorrect. Velesa, turning to the top of Ayin Ches, Velesa de Rav Yanai. Nobody agrees with him. The amount of oil that's used to put on the pinky of a newborn baby is not the appropriate measure of oil with which one can say that they are chayav. Here's really what the machlokas says. Reb Shimon ben Elazar savar eiver katan de gadol eiver gadol de katan ben yomo ki hadadei ninu, that they're the same, namely the pinky of an adult and the largest finger, namely the middle finger of a katan, are approximately the same size. In halacha, we treat them the same. For Reb Nasan savar, no, eiver katan de gadol eiver gadol de katan ben yomalo. He says no, they are not the same exact size, and one would be chayav for a pinky of an adult, but not for the largest finger of a katan. So different shiurim. So that could be the machlokas between them. Taka. My have Allah, how do we paskin? Which one is it? So answers the Gemara, Tashma, we learned in a brayso. The Tanya, Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Shemen kedei lasuch eiver katan shel katan ben yomo. Fascinating. We flip right back to our initial interpretation of the Gemara, and we seem to hold like Rav Yanai, who we just tried to reject. The Mishnah that we had learned said, Maim kedei lashuf bahen es hakilor. We said that there has to be water enough to mix with the ingredient of kilor. And again, it's this type of salve that one would put on their eye when there's an eye injury. So how does this work out? Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye says, Michte, kol milsa de shchicha velo shchicha. When there is something that is common to use and also has an uncommon use, this is a general rule, also rabbanan basar de shchicha lekula. Then the Chachamim would use that which was common to use, even if it was going to be a lenient opinion. However, shchicha v'shchicha, if an item was going to be used for 2 common things, again, both of them are very common. Let's say water that's used for drinking and water that's used for medication. They're both fairly common in our in our world. So then, azul rabbanan basar d'shchicha l'chumra. So again, where an item is used for both common and uncommon things, we follow the lenient opinion of the more common thing that you use. But where they're both very common, then we try to be more machmir. So here are a number of samples of this. Yayin, shisiyaso shchicha, rifuaso lo shchicha. By wine, very common to drink wine, obviously. However, wine is not used for a refuah very commonly. Therefore, in such a case, what did we say the rule should be? We follow that which is shchiach, that which is common, even if the result of that is that it's lenient. Chalav, what about milk? Achilas shchicha. We drink milk all the time, but milk is not commonly used for healing. So then, same guideline, if it's shchiach v'lo shchiach, we should use the shchiach for a kula. So there too says the Gemara, azul rabbanan basar achilasa v'kula. We follow the leniency. Dvash too, honey. Achilasa shchicha, refuasa shchicha. There, again, from the other aspect, we were just talking about the previous examples as a food that's used that's shchiach, and for refuas is not shchiach. Here, we're going to dvash, and dvash is used for both. Dvash achilasa shchiach, shchicha, refuaso shchicha, so there azul rabbanan basar refuaso l'chumra. That should be the rule. All of that makes perfect sense. However, all of this was a prelude to a question. Says the Gemara, elamayim, what about water? Michti, let's analyze. Shisiyaso shchicha, we know that drinking water should be commonplace. Refuaso lo shchicha, but water is not normally used. It's not commonly used for healing issues. But if that's the case, then why did we follow the machmir opinion? What did we say? The rule should be that where you have something that's done commonly for regular drinking, but uncommonly for refuah, then we follow the lenient opinion of that which is common. Yet here, what did we see? My taima azul rabbanan basar refuaso l'chumra. Why then, when it came to water, did we follow the more machmir opinion? It should have been more lenient to follow the opinion of drinking. We drink way more water than we would put in with the kilor, which the Mishnah was talking about. So the question by water is that it doesn't follow the regular rules. The rule should be that when something is shchiach and lo shchiach, we follow the leniency of the shchiach, that which is more common. So because drinking water is more common and using water for healing is less common, and the lenient side would be drinking water because we drink a lot more water in 5 ounces. Pick your regular small little Dixie cup. We drink so much more water than we would put in to mix into this little powder for your eye. So we should have followed the lenient opinion. Why then did the Mishnah follow the strict opinion? It doesn't make any sense. So Amar Abaye, there's 2 answers the Gemara gives. We have a machlokas Abaye Rabba. Amar Abaye b'Galila shanu. It's not true in the Galil. In the Galil, they used to use water all the time. And our Mishnah is following the opinion of the Galil, which follows the principle of shchiach v'shchiach. Water really is not in the category of shchicha v'lo shchicha. They're both used for drinking and for healing. So in the Galil, that's how they use it. Rava doesn't agree. Rava Amar, afilu tema b'shar makomos. It's not only true there, it's true in general. How so? Says the Gemara, Shmuel, like the opinion of Shmuel, Damar Shmuel, Kol shekiyane masu umetalale, levarmi maya de masu velo metalale. It's different. By most liquids, when they are used with kilor for the eye medication, they make it so pasty that it's difficult to see after you put the medication on. Masha'ein kain, when it comes to water. When you use water, because water is such a thin liquid relative to others, so when you mix it in, you're still able to see. Namely, when we're talking about this eye medication, it is shchiach. It is shchicha to this particular solution of refuah, which is that one should use water with kilor to make this ingredient so that you're still able to see after using the medication. And therefore, the havamin of our question was that water is in the category of shchicha v'lo shchicha, and we should have been lenient to follow the shchicha, which is a much greater shear to be chayv when you carry it out. Answers the Gemara, it's true in general that water is not a regular tool as it relates to refuah. However, when it comes to kilor, we prefer to use water, and therefore by the kilor, by the eye medication, it is shchiach, and therefore it's no longer a case of shchicha v'lo shchicha, but rather it's a case of shchicha v'shchicha. And in such a case, we follow the stringent opinion, which is not the amount of water that you drink in a cup, but rather the amount of water that you would use for kilor. Very good. Ushar kol hamashkin b'revius. That's what our Mishnah quotes. The Tanu Rabban and the rabbis taught us. Dam b'chol mine mashkin b'revius. Blood and all other forms of liquid we use in the amount of a revius. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer dam kidei likchol be'ayin achas. He argues and says, no, we use blood to color one eye. What does that mean? Shekain kochlin levirkis. There was a certain type of medical issue that people had where there was something that would protrude from their eyes, and they would treat it with some form of blood. We'll see where the animal comes from shortly, what animal it is. And the amount, that's why Rav Shimon ben Elazar argues, is that we take that tiny amount of blood and apply it to the eye, and that's considered a refuah. So whereas the Tanna Kama holds it by dam, we hold that it's a revi'is, but here argues the dissenting opinion of Shimon ben Elazar holds, no, it's a much smaller amount because of the case of birkis, where there is such a protrusion from a person's eyes. Says the Gemara, Umay Ninhu, what is the blood that we are talking about? Dama de Tarnagolas bara, it is the blood of a chicken that is a wild chicken. Okay, let's see how the brisa here continues. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer Dam kadei likchol bo ayin achas shekain kochlen liyarod. No, we have a different standard. Yes, it's one eye, but not for that thing that was sticking out of the eye, but rather for something internal to the eye. Shekain kochlen liyarod. Yarod is a reference to cataracts, and there they would use the blood of a different animal to solve that problem. Ask the Gemara, where did the blood come from? Answers the Gemara, Dama dichrushtina. This was an animal that lives underground. It was the blood of a mole. The simanech, how do you remember which blood was used for which? Which blood was used for the protrusion in the eye, and which blood was used for the cataract which was in the eye? Says the Gemara, v'simanech gava legava bara levara. The word gava means inside in Aramaic. That which was inside the eye, namely the injury in the eye of the cataract, was solved by an animal that lived internal, namely the mole who lives underground. And bara levara, that which sticks out, the protrusion in the eye, was solved by the animal that is bara, that is wild, similar language, and that's how one can remember which is which. Bamed dvarim amurim, that which we learned in our Mishnah, this brisa that we just learned about the blood, when do we say all of these opinions? That's b'motzi. All of the shiurim that we're talking about is when you carry it out. But if you remember, we learned the other day, what about a shear that a person would store in their house? What about b'matzniya? Aval b'matzniya kol shu chayev. Any amount would be of blood would be considered problematic. And the dissenting opinion says, Rav Shimon Omer, no. What are all the shiurim in this case about the wine? That's b'matzniya. That's when you're saving it in your house. However, aval the motzi, a more lenient opinion when we're talking about carrying on Shabbos. So there, eno chayev ela b'revi'is, only when there is a revi'is. Says the Gemara, modim chachamim l'Rav Shimon. There is a time when they do agree. When do they agree? Shofchen b'motzi shofchen l'reshus harabim, when one is carrying out unusable water, dirty water, into the Reshus Harabim, that there, sheshiurim b'revi'is. In such a case, there we would say that one is only going to be held accountable when there is a revi'is. All right, let's dig into aspects of this brisa. Omar Mar, the rabbis have taught us. Bamed dvarim amurim, we said that when does the shir apply b'motzi? When one is carrying out. However, aval b'motzi, b'matzniya, when one is keeping something, when one's putting something away into storage, there we said kol shus. It says the Gemara, aren't we talking about the same exact person? Like, who's the one carrying out and who's the one who's putting it in storage? Atu matzniya lav motzihu, the same guy who's putting something in storage. Isn't that the same guy who's being motzi, and he has two different shiurim for the same exact item? So says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, the Gemara gives nukimta. On what case are we dealing with? Answers the Gemara, B'talmid she'amar lo l'Rabbi. You have a student whose Rebbe said to him, Lech upnei li makom l'seuda. Go find me a place where I can have a meal. Go clean off the table for me. Halach upanalo. He went and he cleaned it off. Now, davar chashuv lakol, something that's chashuv to everyone. Chayav ilavei. If he would then carry that item out, whatever it is, if it's a chashuv, a gold spoon, whatever it is, so then carry it out, you'd be chayav. However, davar she'eno chayav lakol, something that isn't chayav for everyone, iatzne a Rabbi, if his Rebbe would have stored it, then mechayav ilavei, then even the students would have been held accountable for such a thing. V'ilo, but if the Rebbe would not have even stored that thing, then lo mechayav. In other words, we're trying to answer the question of how can you say that there's two shiurim for one person in the same brisa? And answers the Gemara, we're not talking about the same person. We're talking about a Rebbe and a Talmud, and there are different shiurim for those two people, because maybe something's chashuv to the Rebbe but not to the Talmud, but we'd carry over the Yisr even to the Talmud for putting it into storage or for carrying it out, because that's what the Rebbe wanted. Omar Mar, the next part of the brisa that we learned, we said, Modim Chachamim l'Rabbi Shimon v'motzi shofchen l'Reshus HaRabim, where one has water to dump, he's going to have to be chayiv if the shear is b'revius, shashiurim b'revius. Says the Gemara, shofchen l'may chazi. What is this water even beneficial for? So answers the Gemara, it's shofchen l'may chazi. It's actually very, very useful in regards to making clay. Amar of Yomi alagab satit, in order to make clay, that is the case. Iva Tanya tit kedei lasos ben pikur, even a very, very tiny amount to close off the opening of a kli. Answers the Gemara, lo kasha, that's not a big difficulty. Ha de megabel, ha de lo megabel. When it comes to the smaller amount that is pikur, that's already going to be made. So there, the shear, it's a much smaller amount of water. But the larger shear that we said is going to be for a revius, that is when you have yet to need the water. No one's going to separately make this tiny amount of water to stuff the opening of a kli, this brisa that we interjected and asked from. It's a tiny amount of clay, and people don't make it that way. They make it in much larger form. So that's why the Gemara says that in the brisa that's speaking about the pikur, which seemingly is much smaller, so there you made that en masse, you made that large, and you only grabbed a certain amount of clay that you needed on Shabbos. That's a much smaller shear of water, but it's still a revius. The resulting shear of the clay is going to be the same for the pikur, it's just that there's less water. But what water are we talking about that's a revius? That's this larger amount that's referenced here. Baruch Hashem, yet another Mishnah. We're all the way at the bottom of Ayin Ches Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara, more shiurim. Hamotzi chevel kedei lasos ozon lakupa. A person who has a rope, that the amount of rope that is needed is in order to make an ozen, literally an ear, but in reference, it's a handle for a kupa, for some type of basket. What about gemi, something that's made out of reeds? There, kedei lasos tilai lenapa ulakavra. We learned about this by Borer, lenapa ulakavra. These were types of filters that were used, and you would kind of hold them in a way with like a strap, a reed around your neck, and then you could pour stuff over it, some type of contraption that you were able to hold with reeds around your neck. And there the Mishnah says, kedei lasos lenapa ulakavra, that's when the reeds are going to be problematic. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, the reeds were problematic in a different shear and a smaller shear, seemingly. Kedei litol mimenu midas mina lekatan. That's when you would cut out the bottom of a shoe for a child from the reed, and under those circumstances, that was the shear where it would be problematic. Niyar, what about paper? We're going to discuss this a lot more on the Amud Beis. Says the Gemara, kedei lichtov alav shtar kesher mochsen. If you are going to write out a receipt of some kind that the tax collectors could see that you actually paid your taxes, always got to keep that on hand, then that is the case. And if you take out that piece of paper that is your star that proves that you gave out taxes, that you paid your taxes, you would be chayav. Niyar machuk. What about paper that you've erased from? It's not like our paper where you erase and the integrity of the paper is the same. I don't know if you've ever seen this happen, but in the Sefer Torah, when they do erasing, they take a scalpel and they scrape the parchment off. It actually removes some of the pieces of the parchment as well. Sometimes you can look in a Sefer Torah, if you've ever done a fair amount of Kriya, you'll see this as well, that sometimes letters have been scratched and it looks a different color. As you dig deeper in the layers of the parchment, it may change colors, very visible. On my cloth for smicha, I have that. They scratched out a part. It's very, very noticeable to me, very visible. So you can see the difference. So that paper was not the same quality. So therefore, the shear is different. It's not like the regular paper. There, what's the shear? It's if you can wrap a small amount of paper around shel plyton. We learned about plyton before, about a woman who would wear this out on Shabbos because she didn't smell very good, and it would kind of help to cover over some body odor. So what they would do is they would wrap some type of paper around to make sure that there would be no leakage from the kli itself, and because of that, that is therefore the shear. What about ore? What about leather? Kedei lasos kamia. We spoke about a kamia as well, in order to use it for some type of amulet. What about cloth? Cloth is very important, very common in our culture. Not that we carry it freely, but it's used in a lot of things that we have, in a mezuzah, in our tefillin, and other places as well. Kedei lichtov alav parsha katana shebetefillin shehi Shema Yisrael. The shortest of all the parshios in tefillin, of all 4 parshios, was the parsha of the Shema, and that the minimum amount of space that is required for a parsha to have the psukim of the first paragraph of Shema would be the shear of chiyuv for carrying out a klaf on Shabbos. What about ink? Tiny amounts. Should they lichtov shtei osios, just enough to write 2 letters? What about kechol? What about eye makeup? Could they lichol ayin achas, enough to dress one eye? What about devek? Devek is some type of tape or glue. Could they litain berosh hashafshaf? This was used to put on the end of a piece of wood. What about zephes v'gofris, which is pitch and tar? Could they lasos nekev, that was used in order to create a hole? They would use it and then create a space in the middle. So that something could be poured out from it. Shava, what about wax? Could they litain al pi nekev katan? They'd use wax to close up a small hole. Maybe a few droplets of wax would have been sufficient. Charasis, what about cheres is pottery, and this is some type of crushed pottery or a crushed brick that was used. Could they lasos pikur shel tzorfezav? They take this crushed brick in like a powdered form, and they'd use it to make an opening, to make the opening a little bit smaller. In the case of lasos pikur shel tzorfezav, those who were melting metal so that they could pour it out in an appropriate measure, basically making a tapered opening. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, I don't agree, but rather could they lasso pitput, some type of, it translates here as a tripod, some type of standing device upon which another kli would stand, and that would be the shear that would be problematic for charasis, for this crushed, for the crushed pottery. Subin, what about bran? So there, could they litain al pikur shel tzorfei zahav? They would use it on the opening of tzorfei zahav. It actually was used as a form of fuel. What about seed? What about lime? So a lot of different unique uses for lime. Of course, in different concentrations, it could be pretty damaging if it's used in a heavy concentration. Kidei lasuch ketana shebebanos, enough to use that little girls would use. And here the art scroll points out in the commentaries and the Forshim as well, write this, that it's just about using it on someone's finger of a young girl. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kedei lasos kilkul, on the temples, they would use it to make their hair lay flat over here if it was popping out in a way that they didn't like. The hairspray of old, Rabbi Nechemia Omer, Kedei lasud undipi, enough to smear on one's forehead. Okay, a lot of very unique applications here. Let's dig into the Gemara. We'll wrap up in just a few minutes. And hopefully right at about the 50-minute mark, we'll be able to wrap up today. Let's continue. Says the Gemara, we said that a rope can be used for a basket, yet reeds are used for the colanders, for the sieves, to filter things, for the nap of a kabra. Asks the Gemara, why can't the rope be used for that measurement? Maybe it's a different measurement. No reason why the chebel can only be used for a basket, answers the Gemara. That's not correct. It's a very good reason. Because the ropes would, when you're moving the nap of a kabra around, when you're moving the sieve around, as you shake it, it would kind of wear down the nap of a kabra and minimize its effectiveness, and therefore people would not make a nap of a kabra out of rope, and therefore the shear of a rope stays with the basket shear, which is a smaller shear than would have been for the nap of a kabra. Tana Rabban, and the rabbis taught us, hutzin, there were parts of a palm that were used, kidei lasos ozen lasal kififa mitzris, that were used to make a handle for baskets that were made out of the bark of a palm tree. Sieve, what about the vines that were wrapped around a palm tree? Some of the Tanoim would say, they litain al pi mashpech katan, they put it on the as like a filter inside of a funnel, l'sanein es hayayin, to funnel wine, to separate the pieces of the wine, such as the peels, in order to ensure that they wouldn't get mixed in. What about revav? Revav is basically some type of oil or some type of grease. Kedei lasuch tachas ispagin kitana. This is how they used to, we spoke about this way earlier in the Masech. I think it was Daf Dalet or so. Well, what they would do is they would stick bread on the side of the oven to cook, and they would use this type of grease to stick it there. So that's what's being used here. Use a small amount of bread or a small amount of a baked item. You'd smear it on the bottom, and then you'd stick it on the wall of the oven. So that small amount of oil, the revav, was treated as the amount of oil that was problematic to carry out. But kamashira kesela, it was about the same size as a coin. Asks the Gemara about Tanya Kegrogris. We've already learned elsewhere that it should be in the size of a grogris, which, as mentioned, is a common shear on Shabbos. Enters the Gemara, those are the same thing. Idi v'idi chad shiurahu, the shear of a sela and the shear of a grogris are the same exact things. What about mochin? What about cotton? Says the Gemara, kadei lasos kadar ktana. They had cotton balls back in the day. Then you take cotton, you'd wrap it up into a small ball. That would be the problem point of carrying out. But kamashiro egos, how much is that shear of cotton? That would be problematic. That would only be true in the shear of an egos, and whatever size nut that was. Some of Forshim say is talking about a walnut, a shear that we're fairly familiar with just by eyeballing it. It wasn't that big, however big it was, a pretty small amount. And if you made the cotton ball in that size, again, without compressing it, just leaving it in its natural unsqueezed state, so then that would be the shear of carrying.
Would that be with the shell or without the shell?
With the shell. With the shell.
So it's larger.
Yeah, it's more. I guess it's more of a kula in that way. True, but they don't say it's the inside of a walnut, but seemingly with a shell. Niyar kadei lichtov alav kesher mochsin. We said in the Mishnah that the shear for paper is an amount that upon which you could write down that you've already paid your taxes. So says the Gemara, what are we talking about here? Tana the Tanaim teach us kama kesher mochsin. What is the size of this piece of paper? Answers the Gemara, shtei osios v'chsav yavani. It was 2 letters that were written in the Greek alphabet. Now, the Greek alphabet is written in larger form than in the Hebrew alphabet. So this was a kula, meaning the smaller shear were not chayiv, the larger shear were chayiv. So it says the Gemara, Uriminu, always a contradiction, source to source in the Tanaim. What's the other source in the Tanaim that disagrees with this? Hamoti niyar chalak. If a person sees blank paper, im yesh bo kedei lichtov shtei osios chayiv, lav pater. There we don't see the distinction of osios yavanios. We don't see they have to be Greek letters. It seems from here that it's any type of letters. So maybe I could write it in a very small English. Maybe I could write in a language that, if you can imagine some letters in the Chinese language, they take up a lot of space. You got 10 strokes of the pen, it takes up a lot of space. That would be a big kula. The paper could be 10 times larger. I could write an aleph and a beis on something that's 3 millimeters by 3 millimeters, tiny. So here we have a contradiction. One said that it's ksav yavani, and one doesn't specify at all, which implies that it's regular Hebrew. Answers the Gemara, Amar Rav Sheshes. We'll see 2 opinions here, and nafkaminas between them. Amar Rav Sheshes, mai shtei osios. Osios shel kesher mochsin. We're talking about the same ones as the tax collector. So basically, Rav Sheshes is creating a new kimta. He's saying, really, pshat in the Mishnah is that way. Pshat in the Mishnah is that even though it doesn't say it, but that's what it's talking about. And you can look at the Mishnah that we just learned on Daf Ayin Ches in order to tell us that it's talking about the kesher mochsin. Rava Amar, no, shtei osios tidan is talking about our letters. However, while it's true that those letters are smaller, there was a specific space on the paper that you were able to hold it from. Beis achiza. There was a place to hold the paper. Dahainu kesher mochsin. He said it was the same size. So the letters were smaller of the paper because they were. That's what the second Mishnah that we saw is talking about. The second source in the Tanaim that was talking about regular Hebrew, but the paper was the same size because it also had a beis achiza. It also had a space for you to hold it by. The Gemara has a problem with Rava's opinion, and it's a little bit of a long-winded question, but we'll get there in a moment. Meisive, the Gemara asks the following question: Hamotzini armachuk, a person has paper upon which was erased, ushtar parua, or a document, a document that's stamped paid. So let's see. Imiesh beloven shelo, comparable to the handle to the place to hold it from of Rava. Imiesh beloven shelo kadei lichto shtei osios. If either there was enough space to write 2 letters in its margins, or the paper was large enough to wrap around that small container that held the balsam oil that smelled very good, chayav being lav pater. Now let's see how this fits according to both Rav Sheshes and to Rava. Bishlam Rav Sheshes' opinion, who said that the Mishnah, the contradictory Mishnah that we saw, was really talking about a kesher the paper for the tax collector, and it was really written in ksav yavani. So that I understand. Amar shtei osios. That makes sense. Shtei osios shel kesher mochsin. Shapir. Everything makes sense. It's the same size paper, and this brisa fits perfectly because there was no extra space in the margins for extra letters, like this Mishnah we just saw. This Mishnah that's questioning Rava, no problem at all. That fits perfectly. Elo the Rava, but according to Rava, the Amar shtei osios didanu veisachiza. But he who says that there was space in the margins, hold on one second, and he said dahainu kesher mochsin hacha veisachiza lo tzarich. That it doesn't make sense to also include the Beis Achiza to include the handles? Answers the Gemara, Kashya. That is a question that the Gemara does not answer. We're going to stop here for tonight, and we'll pick up in Yiras Hashem tomorrow night with Daf Ayin Tes. Wishing you all a Shavua Tova, good Tabach. Should be a beautiful week.